Welcome back to Morbidly Bewitched. In the last episode, I discussed some strange moving coffins in Barbados. And in this episode, I'm going to take you to Scotland. Stay tuned. So for this episode, I take you to bonny Scotland. In the beautifully Gothic, stunning architecture of Edinburgh, a 10-minute walk from the imposing centrepiece for tourism, the Edinburgh Castle, lies Greyfriars Kirkyard and Covenanters Prison, which is steeped in bloody tortures history. In Scottish terminology, actually stands for churchyard. Kirk means church, yard, kirkyard. And Greyfriars was used as the location for one of the first ever recorded concentration camps. The prisoners of war in Greyfriars were from the 50-year-long battle between Catholics and Protestants in Edinburgh and across Scotland, with the prisoners being Protestants for practicing that religious faith. So I'm not going to go into the details of that particular war in Edinburgh, but needless to say, it was extremely bloody and cruel. King Charles decided to see the practice of Protestantism as high treason against himself. So he decided he needed a piece of land or some area that he could use as a concentration camp for the punishment of this crime. And he got his lynchman and advocate, Sir George Mackenzie, to take up the task of finding said area. He would go down in history as one of the most ruthless, cruelest men, and was responsible for the murder, the prosecution, execution, and torture of thousands, which gave him the nickname Bloody Mackenzie, and is how he was known by everybody in the area. When people were brought to this delightful area, they would have been met with symbols that were etched into the stone by the request of Bloody Mackenzie to reconfirm to these poor people that when they went in, it was highly unlikely they would ever come out alive. This was men, women, and children. When they got there, they would be chained, beaten, and starved. And the majority were hanged, sometimes up to 10 a day. But that still wasn't good enough for old Mackenzie. Oh, no. Beaten and starved? Sure. What's that? No, even with the rations, and he was responsible for the rationing of the food, he took great delight in inflicting even further suffering by taking the rations and halving them again. So 50%. You're barely staying alive on this loaf of bread. It's not a loaf of bread, it's a slice of bread, but today I'm going to give you half a slice of bread. He was a horribly cruel man. He demanded unrealistic rules. If he seen one prisoner getting too close to another prisoner or trying to converse in any way, he had them shot. If people walking by, onlookers who took pity on these poor people, tried to give them extra food, he said if the meat or the bread so much as touched their lips, he had them shot. Practically everybody who set foot into the Covenanters prison died. And there were even some reports that suggested live roastings. His span of terror lasted for decades. And why do I keep forgetting what I'm about to say? Yep, that was it. 18,000 people. Apparently he was responsible for the deaths of 18,000 people until his own demise in 1691. What a shame. Anyway, Ironically enough, they erected a mausoleum, a very grand mausoleum for its day, in the grounds of the Covenanters' prison, where his body was laid to rest. Everything seemed fine in that area, even considering its horrible history, until fast forward to 1998. One dark, stormy night, a homeless gentleman broke into Covenanters' yard and into Mackenzie's mausoleum to seek shelter. This was a decision this poor man would live to regret. Apparently he got into the mausoleum okay, and he was trying to settle down for the night throughout this storm, when the floor that he was lying on collapsed into the belly of the vault. He reported landing on exposed human remains. There was more than one, but when he fell through the floor, he also damaged and opened Mackenzie's coffin. And since that night, all hell broke loose. The man himself was terrified. He ran with all of his might from the tomb. He scrambled, he dragged himself to the top, he ran from the cemetery in sheer terror, because he also described an unseen force attacking him that he could not see. There was nothing there, but he was being attacked and chased from the mausoleum. The locals in the area genuinely believe that on that fateful night that his tomb was disturbed. They describe an evil being unleashed from that area. And since then, there has been over 500 reported cases of attacks in the cemetery alone, with it being described as the most haunted cemetery in the world. From bites, bruises, scratches, and over 180 reported cases of people collapsing, fainting just on the spot. Some people even fainting and coming around in a completely different location of the cemetery, which is bizarre. Pregnant women who would arrive or go through the cemetery and had absolutely no problems with their pregnancies, they had no sickness or nausea, would be overcome with the feeling of nausea anytime they got near Mackenzie's tomb. Caretakers over the years being chased off the premises by, again, an unseen force of sheer malevolence. Hey honey, you getting a wee bite of lunch? My wee woman just came back in. In 1999, a local minister, Colin Grant, read all of the stories in the paper and decided he wanted to help. So he volunteered to exorcise the entire area. The paper decided this wouldn't be a bad idea because of everything that they'd heard, so a journalist went along with the minister to record what happened throughout the entire event. When they got there, they did say that the minister appeared to be visibly shook, and he used the phrase, "This place will kill me." They got into Covenanters' yard and Greyfriars Cemetery, and he began the rites of exorcism. He described what he could see in his mind's eye as he walked through the premises, and it was apparently horrible. He said he could see dead babies lying in the sides. He could see mothers reaching out in absolute desperation, reaching their hands towards them, pleading for help. He could see someone hanging from the rafters. Just a wretched, wretched sight of cruelty. He ended up basically saying that there was far too many souls to try and save. He did what he could, but the journalist also reported that by the end of the ordeal, he was absolutely exhausted, and he point blank refused to go anywhere near Mackenzie's tomb because the power and the evil there was far too strong. And he repeated the phrase, "This place will kill me." A couple of weeks after this, the minister died. of an apparent heart attack. Since that incident, the rite of exorcism, if anything, exacerbated the evil that had been released in Greyfriars. Some people who are not believers in the paranormal or the supernatural will say that if there is such a thing, then there is no doubt that that would be an example of an unexplainable phenomenon, because the place is steeped in ghosts. The main crux of the problem being what everyone believes is the sheer wrath of bloody Mackenzie. So what do you think? Would you spend the night? I most definitely would. Quite excited. I would. Anyway, join me in my next video when I take you to Russia, Ruski, for an oddity, a strange tale to do with the Russian Tsar. Please subscribe and I will see you soon.